Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming a leader in economic freedom, a champion of social media, and most importantly, our friend, Michelle Malkin.
My name is Michelle Malkin, and I am just a blogger. I've been with you for so many years at RightOnline that I do consider you all friends and fellow warriors. And I know that every one of you who blogs is more than just a blogger. Your moms, your dads, your small business owners, and you're blogging in your spare time when these real reporters can't do their jobs when they're on the clock. Just a blogger. I want it on a t-shirt. It is such an honor to be here. I have to tell you, it's an overwhelming feeling, and it's a basket of emotions that we have carried since our fellow warrior Andrew Breitbart passed away. I think it was a wake-up call for so many of us who've worked in new media that we needed to redouble our efforts. When I was here last year, I rejected those terms, new media and old media, because really the right labels are right media and wrong media. So many conservative activists online over the past couple of days have noted the trenchant rejoinder to the condescending, snotty Juan Williams elitists of that journalism is not something you are, it is something you do. And it's not like the Sorbonne, where you need to travel abroad to get some credential to call yourself a journalist. And of course, this was a constant leitmotif of Andrew Breitbart's work. If you attended any of his events or speeches, what is the one thing that he would do, the signature thing that he would do with audiences? He'd tell you to hold up your cell phones or your cameras and say, whoop, there you go, you're a journalist. Citizen journalism, of course, has been with us well before there was blogging software, well before there was Twitter. And I am often reminded when we're in these right media, wrong media battles of what I consider really the first instance of retweeting in world history. Do any of you remember the samizdat? Samizdat is Russian for self-publishing or self-publishing house. And in the late 1960s, a young, brave Russian poet, anti-communist dissident named Natalia Gorbatsky-Venskaya, I'm going to screw it up, if somebody who's Russian can correct me, evaded and circumvented the official communist regime block on information by gathering up a couple of friends secretly in their homes, probably in their basements, and whatever the Russian equivalent of Cheetos were, they were probably eating them, Joe Scarborough. And they published something called the Chronicle of Current Events. And I pretty much consider it the sort of old media version of blogging. And what they would do is cover the tyrannies of the Soviet regime, write out 5 copies of it, and then retweet it, and have 10 more people distribute and copy it until the word got out. And for her freedom of expression, Natalia was put in a mental institution. And she risked her life for freedom of expression and giving voice to the opposition to tyranny and in favor of freedom. I don't think it is an exaggeration to make a parallel to today's bloggers, who many of you know, and I'm so glad that Governor Palin mentioned it, because there are cowardly mainstream media types, real reporters, who won't even say the name Brett Kimberlin out of fear. There are bloggers who, the kind of harassment that I've gone through over the past 20 years pales in comparison to what these individual bloggers, and some of them are in this room, and we owe them so much for standing up, for telling the truth. Thank them. Get their backs. It's real reporters who have exposed the bloody malfeasance of this administration. I salute Cheryl Atkinson at CBS News, who just won an Edward R. Murrow Award for her reporting on Fast and Furious. But it was just a blogger, and just a blogger, and just a blogger before she came along who initially exposed the bloodiest scandal in Obama administration history. It was people like David Cudrea and Mike Vanderbilt and Mary Chastain and Katie Powell. And it's been bloggers like Anita Moncrief, who's sitting right in front of me, who exposed the fraud and abuse of our electoral system by this administration, who've been telling the truth, not just on day one, but well before day one. And we have to learn from history, and we have to back the truth tellers and the Cassandras out there who are shouting the truth and need to be heard. In all of the years that I've had a foot in new media and old media, and as was mentioned, I've been in this business now for 20 years, I do not feel that there has ever been a time in my adult lifetime that the First Amendment and conservatives' freedom of association and freedom of expression has ever been as under siege as it is now. Governor Palin mentioned Rush Limbaugh. It's not just Rush Limbaugh. It's conservative institutions. It's Americans for Prosperity. It's conservative donors. It's conservative state legislatures and their associations. And what the left and the progressives are trying to do is criminalize conservative thought and dissent. And it is time for us to stand as one and say, hell no, you aren't. The progressives of power, I call them, the miserable ones, the chin pullers that you occasionally see on stations that nobody watches, always ask me, why are you so mad? Why the hell shouldn't I be mad? You're trying to flush our country down the toilet. I'm not going to tell you that you're a nice person. And I think that we need more people in Washington with the backbone and the cojones to speak the truth to tyrannical power and not to concede that these people are nice people. You are going to be watching an extraordinary documentary about that filthy Occupy movement. And these people, many of them, are not just useful idiots, but they are willing pawns. There's a fabulous graphic that somebody tweeted me, just a citizen graphic artist who did it in his spare time, wasn't a real reporter or real staff graphic artist for the Fish Wrapper Record. Not credentialed, however, very trenchant in portraying exactly what's going on here with the Occupy movement. And he had a chessboard, and in the front row were all of the pawns. And the pawns spelled out the word Occupy. And the slogan that was underneath the graphic said, "The pawns don't know what's going on," something like that. And behind them, the king, the queen, the bishops were the NEA, the SEIU, the AFL-CIO, and MMFA, which I'm not going to spell out, but it basically means the poo-flinging Soros monkeys. You're going to see the true ugly face that real reporters will not show you. But what I want to remind you of is a little bit of chronology. Because before the Occupy movement burst onto the scene last fall, the warm-up activities occurred in the summer beforehand. Do you know where it was? It was Longview, Washington, where the goons of the ILWU were sabotaging railroad lines, taking people hostage, endangering people's lives. Why? Not because they represented average blue-collar workers, but because they were having a Luddite hissy fit over a state-of-the-art grain terminal that had been built. And they didn't get to control the machinery inside the plant. And so they fomented this manufactured chaos and got a bunch of scraggly-haired, guitar-playing tools, Occu-tools, to come and agitate on their behalf. These young tools are serving as the front for last gasp big labor organizations that have corrupted themselves and abused and exploited their own rank-and-file workers. The truth about the Occupy movement has to be told. And I think what Andrew Breitbart did most effectively was tell it with a smile on his face. Because mockery really is the best medicine in this instance. Mockery and pity. On Twitter, there's a short hashtag, SMH, which I use all the time, shaking my head. Because sometimes that's all you can do in these instances. Once you unmask the Occupy movement, the next step is taking the future generation of wealth creators and job creators in this country and immunizing them against the progressive virus. So we can't wait until they're in college, and I went to Oberlin College, so I know. I know all about the basket weaving and gender studies. We have to start early. It's got to be before our kids are even in school. And I think one of the most important things I want to leave with you before I introduce David Bossie is that when we're in the midst of war, we cannot lose sight of why we're fighting. We cannot become what we are fighting. These people are so consumed with poisonous ideology that they've lost sight of humanity, of family, of why we fight. We fight for our freedom, for our faith, and for our families. And that's what distinguishes us from these miserable enemies. You know, if I had to be a crusader and a cheerleader for the culture of dependency and entitlement and coercion and a massive welfare state that crushed religious liberty and individual liberty and the free market and innovation, I'd be pretty darn miserable too.
Yeah.
I'd look like Joy Behar. But we are happy warriors. And I think that's the spirit that Andrew Breitbart brought that no one else in the conservative movement has embodied as much as he is. And that giggle I see sometimes when he is in his TV interviews is something that I took away. It was such a wake-up call when he passed. I got to spend some time with him at an AFP event. There were 3 that we did, but Troy was the last one. And we rode back on a plane on an earlier flight, and we got to reflect about the battles that we've been through over the last 20 years. And he and I have been sort of marching in parallel. You may know this, but one of the things that we share in common is that at one point in our careers, we each worked for Arianna Huffington. It's true. I admit it. But I had an excuse. I was young and naive. I was 22. Andrew, as with everything, had a plan. And he had worked with her, of course, as you all know, for the Huffington Post. And his goal, when he did it, was to help expose the unhingedness of the liberals by putting them all in one place. And like with everything he did, he succeeded greatly. Smile on your face, stiff spines. We are in the battle of our lives. It's not just this coming November. This is an ongoing battle. And my reference to the Samizdat is a reminder that the battles and the war that we wage are nothing new. We're just a different set of combatants. And we will have new generals, new foot soldiers, new strategists. Each and every one of your voices counts. Whatever you do, whether you're a blogger, or an incessant addictive tweeter, emailer, Facebooker, we need each and every one of you. You are force multipliers. You're an amplification system in the same way that the underground Samizdat was. And we can only win if we march together. Please help me welcome David Bossie. He has been a combatant in this war for the right for a very long time. Citizens United, every bit as reviled as Andrew Breitbart and conservative blogs are now. He's paid his dues, and he's been an incredible asset to us. So please help me welcome him. Thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow.